Today we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court cases. Oh. Today we're going to be talking about the Supreme Court cases. So we have Angel versus Vital in 1962. This was a case about Ernest Chambers, who was a part of the Nebraska, he was a Nebraska legislator. He challenged a legislator's chaplaincy practice in the federal court. The practice involved offering prayer at the beginning of each legislative session by a chaplain chosen by the state. But the main problem was it was chosen by the state and it was a public fund. That's where the line between church and state separation became blurry. It wouldn't have been a problem if it wasn't publicly funded by the state. And the next case is March versus Chambers, which is the Supreme Court case about the New York State Board of Regents authorizing a short voluntary prayer for recitation at the beginning of each day, at the beginning of each school day. And a group of organizations joined forces in challenging the prayer, claiming that it was a violation to the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. The New York appeals rejected their arguments, and these are the cases that set the precedent for today for prayers in the locker room. So the next slide has to do with when did prayer and sports become intertwined? Prayer was a major part of the Southern tradition in the 19th century. Football games were opened up with prayer by team captains. This tradition started with Ivy League schools like Notre Dame and Princeton, and then it started trickling down to public schools. The next slide shows you, this is the next slide, it shows you the first sport teams that utilize prayer before football games. So we have one team that's from the NFL, the Baltimore Colts, and they started using prayer before the games. And then we have Notre Dame University, which is the private school. And then we have Princeton, which is also a private school. And then we have the Center Colonials. They were known as the Praying Colonials back in the day because they would pray before each football game and in the locker rooms. So the debates for prayer in the locker rooms consist of people saying that around World War II, "In God We Trust" was added to currency, and "Under God" was added to the pledge. And embedded in the history of the United States, Christianity is dominant in this country. And so they say, why can't prayer be in public institutions? Or like, why can't prayer be part of, public schools? And why can't coaches lead these prayers for students or student athletes on their teams? They're not breaking any laws, and it's part of their individual First Amendment rights. It's part of their First Amendment rights because they're not breaking any laws. They have their freedom of speech, but the Supreme Court says differently, and they said then there needs to be a separation between church and state. And when those lines become blurred, it's very hard for schools and for the Supreme Court. So prayer is a form of a locker room ritual. Many schools have defied the Supreme Court stance on prayer in public schools. Instead, coaches find ways to go around the Supreme Court ruling and make the prayer voluntary in schools. They make prayer voluntary by putting them off campus at the same time. And people who don't support public prayers say that they don't pressure anyone into like joining the prayers. They don't pressure anyone to switch religions. They don't pressure anyone to have the same views as them. But and they say that Christianity is dominant in their households and in their towns and in the United States. So why is it a problem for coaches to like express their freedom of speech by praying with their students? On the flip side, we have a controversial debate. So these are the debates against prayer in the locker rooms. So many people who file lawsuits argue that prayers are grounded in Christian beliefs and create informal pressures to give priority to those beliefs over others. So they're saying that Christianity is the main belief, and they create pressure for other students to convert to Christianity. And if they don't convert to Christianity, then they say that the child is ostracized and that they feel ridiculed and that they're socially rejected by their team. And this is a major debate that's going on as of now. It's still going on. The next one is also about controversies surrounding prayers in the locker rooms. So the locker room is a melting pot. Therefore, it represents people from different backgrounds and ethnic groups. It represents diversity so that everyone should feel equal and accepted. So coaches should remain neutral when it comes to religion and locker rooms. And coaches should be there for all students, not just some of them. They shouldn't show favoritism to the majority of students that are of Christian faith. They should be neutral, and they should have that fine line between separation of church and state. So some of my personal thoughts on the matter is that as a student who identifies with Christianity, that separation of church and state is a good idea for public institutions, especially when it comes to locker rooms, because a lot of people can feel left out in locker rooms, and the locker room is supposed to be like where you share your intimate moments and like where you can be there as a team for one another. But if you divide the locker room by like religion, it's bad for the team, and it results in losing, because a team that's not together will always lose. And that coaches should remain neutral in these instances because it's not right for a coach to take sides. I mean, I know coaches want to be there for their teams or for their students, but you can be there without being like, without putting religion into football. So just remain neutral so that everybody in the team feels equal. And so that like there won't be any hazing in the locker rooms. Some people can feel left out. And I want to introduce this video to you. It's about prayer in the locker rooms. And here we go.
Coach is excited when it's backstage. All right, Coach, you saw he slowed down to catch his breath.
Okay, and we're pausing now.
Are you cooking something?
No, Daniela's cooking some water for tea. No, I'm cooking it.
No, still boiling right now.
No, I thought I did. I think I put it to boil instead of turning it off. I'm a dumbass. Come on.
Yeah, what a dumbass.
We only
You
have
have a high too.
Okay, we have 11:27.
Okay, come on.
Okay,
I'm almost done.
I'm
I'm
almost
7
done.
minutes right now.
This is like,
The last one? Awesome, cool.
yeah, this is the last one.
Shit.
What is that?
The water.
Oh, it's just water. It's fine.
I tipped it over.
So this is a.
Water.
Okay, close the door. So this is a video about a coach praying with his team. He wants to be there to support the team. And as you can see, they just won. So let me play the video from the beginning. And here we go.
Coach is excited West Bank Stadium. All right, Coach decides slow down to catch his breath.
And by the way, this is Texas Tech University, which is a public school.
Yeah. This is called a down back in basketball terms. See there? You knew it was gonna be subdued because now they can
See,
see
the coach is about to make a speech. Now they're all posturing for prayer as a team. All the coaches, they're kneeling, they're praying, and see, CBS cuts it off.
Prayer in the Texas Tech locker room and the knowledge that there is one more game to go, and that will be Monday night. Yeah.
And see, CBS cut off the prayer part. And some students debate that prayer is actually good for them. It keeps them motivated, it keeps their head in the game, and it keeps them less distracted. So that's why they like to do prayers in the locker rooms and before the game on the fields. The Supreme Court is saying that prayer is allowed in public institutions and that no faculty or staff should join, but private prayers is allowed. But the problem is when coaches and faculty and staff want to pray with the students and agree with them. So this is an ongoing debate. I hope I answered all the questions you might have had, and that's it. Have a great evening. And this is the Works Cited page.